The unfortunate truth, stay with me now, is that if people can't call you male-centered, they're gonna call you self-centered. And that's exactly what Disney tried to do with its female villains. From Maleficent to Cruella de Vil to Lady Tremaine in Cinderella to the evil queen in Snow White to the biggest baddie I knew growing up, Ursula, these women are all single or widowed. They're jealous, envious, vain, petty, malicious, mean girls who antagonize the princesses simply because they're younger and prettier than them. Or so it seems. But like I always say, patriarchy is an inversion of the truth. And when we stop taking things at face value and actually think critically and look right beneath the surface, that's when we begin to see the truth. And it's the same thing with these villains. If we look closely enough at these characters, we'll actually find 3 hidden truths that Disney hid from us in plain sight. These are hidden truths not only about patriarchy, but also fundamentally about ourselves. And that's what we're going to talk about today. I swear your mind is going to be blown. And once you see these truths, you literally will not be able to unsee them, and you're going to start to see them everywhere. All right, DJ, you know what to do.
Oh, they're hopeless. A disgrace to the forces of evil.
Do you know what a hidden Mickey is? If you don't, let me explain it to you. A hidden Mickey is a Mickey Mouse head, the main big circle with the 2 smaller circles on the sides to show his ears. It's a Mickey Mouse head that Disney illustrators hide in movies and in the theme parks. So one example of a hidden Mickey is when the 7 dwarves in Snow White were washing their hands and faces, and the soap bubbles that were forming in the air, some of them had the Mickey Mouse head. Now, there's the hidden Mickey equivalent in these villains and in these movies, except they're hidden truths. So let's not call them hidden Mickeys. We can call them hidden Neekis. No. I don't know. But they're hidden truths that are right there in front of our eyes. But if you don't know what you're looking for, you're never going to find it. Also, for any of you princesses or princes who are new here, my name is Neeki. I am your host. I am the baddest bitch in the building. Not to be confused with you, who's also the baddest bitch in the building. And my favorite princess is Belle, as you probably know if you've been following me for long enough. You can see the rose in that glass case behind me on my setup. Yes, that is a Beauty and the Beast reference. If you go on my Instagram, you'll see me in yellow dresses like Belle's because I literally bought them because I am the belle of the ball. And when I was a kid, I would literally wear my Belle costume around the house and also out of the house because I was just that bitch. And if you are new here, or even if you are an existing baddie, I just want you to know, you are one of the OGs, the OBs, original baddies, who are listening to this podcast that is going to one day become the #1 rated podcast on Spotify. If you are here on YouTube, you're here before we hit 1 million subscribers. You are all the early adopters. So when this show blows the fuck up, you'll have bragging rights. You'll be able to say, I listened to that show before it became mainstream. So thank you for being here. Thank you for being one of the original baddies, one of the early adopters, one of the pioneers. And today, for this episode, I had so much fun preparing this. So I sat down and I actually watched a bunch of Disney movies in preparation for this. I watched Sleeping Beauty, Cinderella, Little Mermaid, 101 Dalmatians, the live action one with Glenn Close, baddie, and Snow White. And I wanted to focus on these classics before the more feminist narrative took over because it gives us a more unfiltered view of things, as you're going to see in my 3 truths that we're going to uncover. So, to uncover the first truth, you need to understand this. The villains are supposedly the inversions of the princesses or the protagonists. In 101 Dalmatians, there's no princess. The protagonist is Anita, who's just a regular woman. The protagonist villain dynamic is very much meant as a binary. And if you've read my book, you know what I have to say about these binaries. I call these false dichotomies because two opposing things that are not actually opposites are pitted together. But when you're presented with a bad trait or a bad character versus a good trait or a good character, who are you going to be rooting for? Which one do you want to adopt? So, this binary between the princess and the villain is a textbook example of a false dichotomy. The princesses are good, kind, sweet, fair maidens. They're gentle, they're childlike. That's really important. Childlike. These princesses, first of all, they're all teenagers. They're like 14, 16 years old. They are literally children. And these movies fetishize the infantilization of these princesses. There was no rule that said that they had to be 14 years old. When they were taking a fairy tale from the Brothers Grimm, for example, and readapting it for Disney, they could have changed the princess's age as they changed lots of other details in the story. But they didn't, because these movies fetishize infantilization and childlike girls. And you see this with things like the ageless sleep that Sleeping Beauty goes in. I'm quoting it verbatim from the movie, ageless sleep. And the same thing with Snow White. There's this Peter Pan syndrome of staying a child. And that's exactly what patriarchy does. It stunts women's growth. It keeps us emotionally stunted and acting like children. And what's common among all these princesses is they don't want power. They just want love and harmony and happiness. Emphasis on the love. The villains, on the other hand, are in pursuit of power. And that pursuit of power is what makes them tainted. They're dirty and icky and wrong for going after power, even though in pretty much all of these movies, or the majority of these movies that I mentioned, there is somebody in power, and that somebody is a man. It's a king, a patriarch. But that doesn't make him icky. That is his God-given right. But God forbid a half woman, half octopus wants to rule over the sea. No, 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 we can't have that. So I highly encourage you to identify the false binaries, the false dichotomies that you've been socialized into, because there are very few true binaries in this world. And if you have my book, How to Hack the Patriarchy, I do this job for you, because every single chapter starts off with me identifying which false dichotomy or dichotomies we need to unlearn. So, a little cheat code for you if you have my book. Now, here's where the differences between the princesses and the villains get really interesting. Both the princesses and the villains are beautiful, attractive people. However, the princesses, or in the case of 101 Dalmatians, Anita, they have this naive innocence about their beauty because they're not aware that they're beautiful. On the other hand, the villains all have very clearly put effort into their appearances. Something really interesting I noticed is every single one of the villains I mentioned, Maleficent, Cruella de Vil, the evil queen from Snow White, Lady Tremaine from Cinderella, and Ursula. All of these villains have either red lipstick or red nails or both, without a fail. Every single one of them. It was just so interesting for me. I literally had like a running list going. I'm like, does she have red nails? Check. Red lipstick? Check. Every single one of them. And what's more, they all have really curved, like arched, defined eyebrows. Like these baddies went and got their eyebrows microbladed before that was a thing. Because if you look at them, every single one of them have an eyebrow that is about to touch their hairline. And some of them even visibly have more makeup on. Like Ursula, she has eyeshadow. Or Maleficent, that girl literally contoured her whole face. Okay, if it was 2016 and she was using the Kat Von D Shade and Light palette, oh my gosh, she would have gotten an endorsement from Kat Von D. And then she used the Charlotte Tilbury setting spray to set all of her makeup. But the difference here is that whereas the princesses are naive and innocent and naturally beautiful and oblivious to their beauty, the villains all know they're beautiful and visibly put effort into their beauty and even into their appearances. They all have, well, with the exception of Ursula, because she's an octopus, they all have these long, elaborate dresses. Oh my gosh, Cruella de Vil. I hope in her contract, Glenn Close was able to keep all of the Cruella outfits because they were so cunty. When I was getting dressed for this episode, I had either this outfit in mind or a black faux fur off the shoulder, like concoction that I made with red lipstick to channel my inner Cruella. But I wanted to give myself a Disney villain look with my own twist. So that's why I'm wearing this pink faux fur lined cardigan rather than a black one with red lipstick. I got my pink lipstick on. But yeah, a little bit of backstory over my appearance, because if y'all notice, we got a different appearance going on in every single episode, and that is not an accident. Anyways, that brings us to the first truth, that these women have consciousness, and consciousness is extremely dangerous to the patriarchy. And that's because patriarchy is a spell. It's an enchantment of black magic. And as soon as you develop consciousness about the steady diet of lies that you've been fed throughout your life, of the fact that it's an inversion of the truth, when you gain the consciousness of all of these things, that's extremely dangerous to the system, because that's when you wake up from this enchantment. And more than anything, patriarchy is an enchantment that stunts women's growth. Just like Sleeping Beauty, it puts us in an ageless sleep. And when we think of interacting with the world and carrying ourselves in the world like good, nice girls, we are infantilizing ourselves, because we have a false sense of reciprocity that if we act fairly, if we are good, then we will be treated fairly. We will be treated well. Again, this is another theme that comes up in my book in every single chapter, nearly every single chapter, because these, what I call superstitions, are so deeply ingrained in us, and there are things that we need to actively unlearn. And these superstitions are what stunt our growth. Because only children have this sense of reciprocity with the world. Only children think that if they're fair, they'll be treated fairly. If they're good, they'll be treated well. Because in the children's world, when you are a child, you have people enforcing the rules of behavior. The teachers, the parents, they are the ones who are enforcing behavior and making sure people play fair and people play by the rules. But as an adult, that enforcement does not exist. You're in a rat race. You're in a dog eat dog, cat eat cat, cat eat dog world. So going back to the consciousness, that consciousness is what breaks the spell of patriarchy. Like I said, when the revolution comes, you look at what is demonized in women, and that gives you the blueprint for success. Now, this leads me to my next point, which is that these female villains all have a very keen understanding of human nature and of the pitfalls of women. But instead of depicting these villains as intelligent, they're depicted as bitter and envious and petty. And what do I always say? What do I always say? If you hack human nature, you can hack patriarchy. Because no matter what system exists in the outside world, human nature stays the same. And Ursula knew that, let me tell you. For example, oh my goodness. Also, when I was doing research for this, I found out that Ursula was inspired by a drag queen, which makes so much sense. And that the role of Ursula was actually written for B. Arthur. And if you baddies have listened to me long enough, or if you read my book, you know that I'm my favorite show in the entire world is Golden Girls. And Dorothy is my favorite character. Dorothy is played by B. Arthur. So I had no idea Ursula was written for B. Arthur. And I found out that her agent rejected the role because she was so, or he, I don't know if her agent was a man or a woman. We'll assume she was a woman. Her agent was so pissed that they dared suggest a role of a witch for B. Arthur that she didn't even give B. Arthur the script. Anyway, a fun fact for you. Maybe I'll sprinkle these throughout the episode because I uncovered a lot of interesting tidbits of information while I was putting this episode together. And for any other Disney girlies like me, I'm sure you're going to appreciate this. So that was tidbit number one. Anyways, like I said, Ursula has a very keen understanding of human nature and of patriarchy. She is the binary, part of the binary with Ariel. Ursula is this mature older woman, and Ariel is this naive, immature, stubborn teenage girl. And I also, another tidbit is that I found out Ursula is Ariel's aunt and she's King Triton's sister. Didn't know that. And in this binary, it's very clear that Ursula could actually save Ariel from her patriarchal fate, because this girl wanted to go up, change her species entirely, grow legs, and go marry a boy on land. Was going to immigrate and mutilate herself for a guy. And Ursula told her that this is stupid. And when she was going to exchange her voice for legs, Ursula actually told Ariel,
"Yes, on land it's much preferred for ladies not to say a word.
She who holds her tongue gets the man. I think she sang this part. She who holds her tongue gets the man. Probably not like that, but you know.
It's she who holds her tongue who gets a man."
We see the same thing in 101 Dalmatians, where Cruella de Vil said something so, so iconic that I can't even quote it. I gotta let her say it for herself. DJ, roll the tape.
More good women have been lost to marriage and to war, famine, disease, and disaster. You have talent, darling. Don't squander it.
Another fun fact for you. If you listened to the episode directly preceding this one, Machiavelli versus Patriarchy, episode 1, if you listen to the very end of that episode, you would have heard that clip, because that was the Easter egg for this episode. And actually, I had another Easter egg for this episode. Only the really keenly aware baddies would have picked this up by now. In the episode called There's an Entire Side of Patriarchy You Know Nothing About, there was a skit at the end of that episode, and I mentioned, or actually it wasn't me, it was my character, Joanne V. Pius. She mentioned the Evil Stepmom Wet T-shirt contest. And last thing, if anyone is here for the Evil Stepmom Wet T-shirt contest, it's actually down the hall. That was a little hint. See, when the historians study this podcast in 100 years, they're going to have like a whole textbook written about all these Easter eggs that I lay around for you baddies. It's going to be so iconic. Now, even the queen, the evil queen in Snow White, when she told the huntsman to go and kill Snow White so that she could be the fairest in the land, that's only because she read Law 15 in the 48 Laws of Power, which is crush your enemy totally. And she wanted to just follow that law and crush her enemy. Because as a monarch and an absolute ruler, you got to get rid of your enemies. See, if a man were to do that, no one would bat an eye. So these women, similar to what I was talking about in terms of consciousness, these women have woken up to the fact that there's more to life than men. Okay, you can pursue power, you can be greedy, you can go around killing your enemies, you can try to rule the sea, whatever it is that they wanted to do. There's more to life than pursuing men. But they're depicted as being evil, for being beyond the pick-me struggles of the average woman who doesn't have consciousness and who's been brainwashed by the patriarchy. Because in that dichotomous framework, in that binary, the good girls are only good when they're innocent and simple and childlike and naive and clouded by romantic love, because that's the easiest way you can take advantage of a woman. And we're warming up to the second truth, which I'm going to drop in a couple of moments. Hey baddies, it's Editing Neeki, and I just wanted to take a moment to talk about our Lord and Savior. I'm just kidding. Could you imagine? No, what I really wanted to talk about is how you are missing out on a bunch of content if you are not subscribed to my Patreon. That is where I have not only bonus episodes, but episodes that I deleted from my main feed, some of my really old episodes that are never going to see the light of day again, episodes that I recorded but simply decided I don't want to make them public. Hey baddies, this is editing Neeki during editing Neeki. So this is editing Neeki. I also wanted to add that I'm going to be uploading some deleted scenes from this episode onto Patreon. And there are a few perks that I didn't actually mention. Like you get a free EPUB and PDF copy of my book. You get discounts on physical copies of my book and also on any upcoming merch, any upcoming live shows. And you also get a direct line to me, not to be confused with the baddie hotline, because Patreon is the best place to reach me and get a direct response from me because I'm always chatting with the baddies on Patreon. All right, back to editing Neeki, not to be confused with editing Neeki. And all sorts of other perks like voting power on my girly laws, access to the baddie hotline, which is a phone number to the phone on my desk that you can call. I'll pick up like 50% of the time, depending on how busy I am.
I'm a very busy woman and I haven't got all day.
Birthday cameo videos and all sorts of other perks. Check it out if you like. I will leave the link in the show notes. And in the meantime, don't forget that I am happy that you are here. All right, let's get back to the show. Has anyone else noticed that these villains are reminiscent of witches and their cats? Because every single one of these villains have a pet. Maleficent has her raven, the evil queen has her crow, Ursula has her 2 eels, Lady Tremaine has Lucifer. Everyone has a pet. Even the male villains, like Jafar, low-key smash. I'm not proud to admit it, but low-key smash. He has his annoying ass, what is it, a parrot? Fucking fuck-ass Iago. But everyone has a pet. It really reminds me of witches and their cats. And in the same way that women with special powers were burned at the stake as witches, and men with made-up special powers became prophets. In the same way, Disney hides a very fundamental truth from us. And this is the second truth, that women inherently have more power than men. I'm not saying women are better than men. It's not a competition. But inherently, as portals to this earth, as beings who create life, women have more power than men. And in these movies, even though patriarchs like King Triton or King Stefan from Sleeping Beauty are the ones who have supposedly the most power in that kingdom, at the end, they're still unable to measure up to the power of the female villain. For example, when Ariel signs Ursula's contract to give Ursula her voice in exchange for legs, Triton tries to break the contract with his trident. I was like, wait, with his Triton? That's not right. Although Triton was also a smash. But when Triton was trying to break the contract with his trident, don't get them confused, he couldn't. The contract was binding and complete. And at the end, he had to sign another contract with Ursula to give himself to Ursula in exchange for Ariel's freedom. And he became a seaweed in Ursula's garden. So he literally had to succumb to her powers. Or at Aurora's christening in Sleeping Beauty, when Maleficent showed up because she was mad that she didn't get invited, she put the curse on Aurora, saying that on her 16th birthday, she's going to prick her finger on a spinning wheel and die. One of the good fairies, Merryweather, put her own spell saying that instead of dying, Aurora will just be put in a ageless sleep and she can be woken up by true love's kiss. So the forces of good still couldn't measure up to Maleficent's power. And also, that was really petty. Like, why would you decide to kill somebody because you weren't invited to their christening? If anything, that's just one less gift that you have to get a person. So, I mean, I would be happy not to be invited to that. But anyway, I digress. Now, this truth shows that it's almost as if women have this power that borders on the supernatural that men simply don't have. And this points to the next truth that Disney hid for us. And like I said, I don't believe anyone is inherently better than anyone else. I'm not saying this because I believe women are better than men. I believe that humans are naturally matriarchal and women simply have powers and abilities that men don't have, in the same way that men have some abilities that women don't have. But that power that women have simply outranks that of men. And again, I'm not saying this because anyone is better than anyone else. Men have their role, men are extremely useful, bless their hearts. But there's just, women are portals to this earth. And there's no denying that. When the revolution comes and we can reproduce asexually, that's when you'll see. And this points to the third truth that Disney hid for us. A lot of these villains are driven by a greedy pursuit of power. I'm not going to say that they're good people. Like I said, Maleficent cursed a newborn baby because she wasn't invited to her christening. Ursula did some shady contract dealings with people and then tried to sabotage her contract with Ariel. So they're not good people. As much as I am still rooting for them in these movies because the princesses are so pathetic. But growth for the sake of growth is cancer. Power for the sake of power is a person's undoing. And this points to the third and final truth, which is that patriarchy contains the seeds of its own destruction. What's really, really interesting in these movies is if these characters die, they don't die in their regular form. They die as a being that they transformed into. Maleficent dies as a dragon. Ursula dies as Mega Ursula. And Snow White's evil stepmom dies as the old hag. We even see it with male villains like Jafar, who I mentioned before, Smash. He turns into a genie before he doesn't die, but before the movie ends and he meets his fate. Ultimately, these villains did bad things, but the female villains still operated within the confines of a patriarchal system. They were still marginalized, likely because they were women. I know Maleficent has a whole backstory in the live action film with Angelina Jolie about how King Stefan did her dirty. Ursula was, relegated to the margins of the ocean while her brother ruled over the sea. So they are marginalized within a patriarchal system. Even Cruella de Vil, we don't support animal cruelty, but that woman was so ahead of her time. So ahead of her time. So these women operated within the confines of a patriarchal system in a kingdom. It's actually with the male villains that we see the seeds of their own destruction. So let's talk about the male villains. And for the scholars who are studying my podcast in 100 years, this is what's called a pivot. So the male villains. Jafar. Let's talk about Jafar because I've mentioned him just several times today. And it's not just because he's kind of hot, but because he contains the seeds of his own destruction. I'm sorry, I don't know why I'm laughing. He's just, I don't know. This is just kind of a smash. I don't know. Okay, leave me alone. Jafar is the textbook example of somebody who wants power for the sake of power. And when he gets control of the lamp and becomes the master of the genie, he uses his 3 wishes, first to become Sultan, then to become the most powerful sorcerer of all time. I literally can't make this shit up. And then he uses his 3rd wish to become a genie. But he doesn't realize that a genie is not a free agent, that a genie has a master. He essentially wished himself into a life of servitude. And that was his ultimate downfall. And that's how the movie ends. And it's just like how most men get their patriarchal dividends when they give a piece of their humanity in exchange for patriarchal power. When they use their expendability for the benefit of capitalism, for the benefit of patriarchy. There's a transaction there that contains the seed of their own downfall. Because there's no such thing as getting something for nothing in this world. That doesn't exist. Gaston is another example from Beauty and the Beast. I'm so glad we get to talk about my favorite movie. And here's another fun fact for you. The character of Gaston was created by Linda Wolverton, a woman. Of all the villains I discussed today, Gaston is the only villain who is created by a woman, and honestly, he's a villain who just gets it right. Like in terms of his character and the things that he symbolizes. Amazing. Amazing. Linda, you did such a good job. So Gaston is the poster child of hypermasculinity, of toxic masculinity. He wants to conquer Belle simply because she's the most beautiful woman in the village. He's probably closeted, but he is such a poster child for toxic masculinity, and he eventually dies fighting the Beast, who is an embodiment of healthy masculinity, especially as the Beast progresses throughout his own self-growth journey and becomes less of an asshole. And Gaston thinks he's this macho, untouchable guy, and his ego is so big and so inflated that he really thinks he's impenetrable. But we know he wants to be penetrated by another man, but he thinks he's this impenetrable fortress, this bulletproof person who can't be touched because he is so manly, because his strength and his virility are measured by his manliness. But that eventually leads to his downfall, because when he fights the Beast, he again doesn't think that he's going to meet his downfall. He thinks that because the Beast is this vulnerable loser, this ugly guy, even though the Beast is kind of a smash as a human and a beast. I'm sorry. Okay, on that note, Gaston is also a smash. Listen, this episode is kind of messy, but I said what I said. I don't care. I said what I said. They're all hot. And also it goes without saying that all the female villains are smashes. 100%. But back to Gaston the Beast. Gaston's masculinity is his downfall. His masculinity contained the seeds of his own destruction and eventually led to his death. So for any of you who are feeling hopeless, helpless, angry, lost, just remember that the patriarchy contains the seeds of its own downfall. So let's recap the 3 hidden truths. Number 1, female consciousness is the antidote to patriarchy. Number 2, women inherently have more power than men. And number 3, patriarchy contains the seeds of its own destruction. As I always mention when I'm talking about a list on this show, this is not exhaustive. So if you've uncovered another truth by watching these movies, write them down in the comments because I'm very curious. And I had so much fun preparing this episode. I got to watch Disney movies. I got to take notes during my Disney movies. It was so great. And on a related note, this is just the beginning. If you want to see me do episodes on similar analyses, but of different movies or movie franchises or characters, put your suggestions in the comments, and who knows, maybe I'll create an episode based on something that one of you baddies suggest. I actually do that all the time. When you baddies DM me, email me suggestions, I put that in my list of fan requested topics, and a lot of them I have produced. So with that, I'm going to close the episode. Thank you all so much for listening, and don't forget that you are the baddest bitch in any building that you step foot in. Until next time, stay bad. Love you. Bye. May I have your attention, please? I'd like to give a shout out. I don't know what accent this is. I'd like to give a shout out to all the baddies who are supporting on Patreon and making this show possible. Shout out to you, baddies. Melinda, Lindsay, Danny, Nadine, Kate, Yelena, Via, Adriana, Amara, Wisal, Hannah, Emberly, Brittany, Gemma, Amanda, Red, Sophia M, Sophia K, Ladenko, Melissa, Lisa, Nilufar, and Naomi. Thank you all so much. Attention no longer required.
The whole town's talking about it. It's not right for a woman to read. Soon she starts getting ideas and thinking.
Gaston, you are positively primeval.
Why, thank you, Belle.